Welcome to CERAWeek 2009. I'm here with Deborah Wince-Smith, the President of the Council on Competitiveness, and we've just come from a breakfast dealing with the Energy Security and Sustainability Initiative. Deborah, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, David.
It's probably the most important issue on everyone's minds. Energy has become the center of almost every conversation. How did the Council on Competitiveness get the energy bug?
Well, energy, of course, is a huge driver of how we make things, how we live. I mean, it permeates every aspect of life. And for the Council, we're all about how do we as a nation remain prosperous, have a high standard of living, and succeed in the global marketplace. And energy is really the fuel and the power that enables all of that.
So you obviously arrived at the end of a personal journey that got you here. What was it for you, the aha moment that set you on this course?
Well, it was really back in 2004. We had just concluded our big National Innovation Initiative in Washington. That was a whole year of looking at how is innovation going to drive the productivity and the new markets and services of the future. You know, the United States, we can't compete on commodity products or standardized services. We have to continually innovate and add high value. And energy was really taken almost as a given. The price, the supply, you know, how that all fed into our economic competitiveness was really not on the radar screen. But of course, 2004, we began to see the signals with the huge demand coming out of the emerging economies, and also that it was going to be innovation at the frontiers of these new technologies that would be very much the transformation. So we got very excited about energy and launched this new work.
Now, how did you go about enrolling people into this effort? Was that an easy sell, or did you have to push people a bit?
Well, it was not a hard sell. The way we do our work at the Council, which is kind of exciting and unique, is that we bring together these CEOs, wonderful CEOs that are very committed to our country from every sector, and we match them up with leading university presidents and labor leaders to put together a unique constellation of thinkers and doers to first help us define the problem and then begin to do the policy work that comes up with an action agenda. So when we looked at energy, we thought, we need to look at the demand-driven perspective of this. How does this impact the users? And that was really our sweet spot in terms of framing this. So we went to a great user of energy, Caterpillar,
right,
and asked Jim Owens, the CEO, would he be interested in representing the industrial side of how we get to a demand-driven, sustainable energy transformation. And then, of course, on the university side, you know, I think this project had her name all over it. Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson, you know, coming out of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, being a leader in so many areas on this.
And we're going to be talking with her later about models of innovation. I have to say I'm quite looking forward to that. One of the things that people could misunderstand is that the Council on Competitiveness is focused on the United States. Energy is such a global issue. We're all on the same ship. So how about links with other countries and sister-type organizations?
Well, you know, by 2020, 80% of all global consumers will be outside the developed world. And already, the amount of revenue U.S. corporations produce outside the United States is 3 times all our exports. So we have global enterprises, and they operate all over the world. And they're our partners, our competitors, you know, our consumers that we're going to work with. So you have to do this in a global setting. This cannot be approached only from the U.S. perspective.
And I think that shows through in terms of a lot of the language, the blueprint that you set out in the initiative. Do you want to talk a little bit about what are the key components of the initiative?
Yes. This is our 100-day action plan that builds on a whole year of work we did with 3 progressive dialogues. And it is directed to our new president and the new Congress, but also to the private sector as well for things that they need to do. And the first recommendation is a pretty powerful one, and that is the government should use the power of its procurement as a huge buyer to begin to really build energy efficiency into everything it builds and buys. And that in itself will have a huge impact. And then one of the other recommendations that's critical, and I think is very much in line with CERA, is we need to utilize all sources of energy now and in sustainable ways, that there's no single bullet. It's not just going to be renewable, solar, wind, biofuels, nuclear. It's the whole panoply to get us to where we have to be in the future.
Absolutely. And that seems at odds with the last 100 years, where really there's been one clear technology winner at a time in transportation. You know, there's the gasoline and diesel hegemony. How do you see a market evolving to make room for all these different things rather than having one clear winner in any particular space?
Well, I think it's going to be a combination of market forces, both in terms of cost, but also what the consumer wants, you know, the customer, but also the regulatory environment as well that will accelerate some of this change. And I'll give you an example. You know, right now we're in this transition to digital TV from analog. And, you know, we're all worried about when the date is going to be where we have to have these new...
They've just delayed it again.
They've just delayed it, which they shouldn't. But
it's not going to help your metaphor, I know. But
well, this is an interesting analogy. I was back in the government, actually, in the early 90s when the whole thing about digital HDTV came up. And everybody was fighting for their technology. You know, we had this one, we had that one. And the U.S. government did a very brilliant thing. And that was... Believe me, they did. And I'm not saying that just because I was there at the time.
I said nothing.
The Secretary of Commerce had a lot of power over the standard. This was Bob Mosbacher, who's here in Texas. Actually, what he said was brilliant, the decision. It will be digital. We're going to move digital. Didn't say which technology path, any of that. And that became, in effect, the transparent pricing signal.
Right.
That unleashed all the innovation, all the transformation that's gotten us to today. I mean, everybody's throwing out these obsolete TVs. It's just unleashed everything. There's a parallel now in this energy transformation that we need this, transparent pricing signal and putting a value on carbon. It's a very interesting analogy of the power of a regulatory signal that has a pricing impact in the market.
And we have to make sure, as you say, it's the right regulatory signal.
Right.
I'm always struck that these plans tend to be 100-day plans, and I remember 8-minute abs and the competition from 9-minute abs. Obviously 8-minute abs completely destroyed it, but wait till 7-minute abs comes. Is 100 days a magic figure, or is that just essentially trying to get it onto the radar horizon?
It's to get it onto the radar, and that usually, I mean, most presidents, particularly one that's been elected with such support from the country, they want to make a mark and signal to the country, these are the things that are the most important to our
administration. It's not just PR, as you say. The foundations have to be laid early, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. And,
it is a marathon,
so it's going to be a number of years down the line that constancy has to remain.
I mean, certainly on our recommendation about, the superhighway for the electrical grid. I mean, that obviously is going to take a while. But the vision is important. I mean, why shouldn't the United States be the place in the world that has, a self-healing, intelligent, interoperable grid that can bring all sources of energy on and make that of value to the consumer and the user? Why not?
Now you're holding a piece of cardboard, I can see there, but it's not just a piece of cardboard. It's more than that.
Well, these are compete bonds. Okay. Now, David, of course, you're too young to remember this. But when I was a little girl, and even a teenager, at all of our birthday parties, we used to always get savings bonds. And, of course, we didn't like that because we wanted stuff, but our parents would give us savings bonds. And even in our jobs, we would have our salary deducted, for our savings bonds. This is a 21st century, back to the future compete bond that the Council on Competitiveness has recommended that will revitalize savings for all Americans, tax-free. This will build up their savings that, of course, have been depleted in this mess on Wall Street. But where will the proceeds go? The proceeds will go to invest in the energy infrastructure of our country.
Now,